Can you imagine being over 40, rich, very attractive, intelligent, and yet still single and not by your own choice? Last year, our Entangled Web Stories rep in Kenya went to visit a very well-known mental institution in Nairobi to meet a woman they called the Time Traveler Woman. They were ushered into a small room. They met this woman who goes by Katya. She looked fine, she looked healthy, but she had this odd stare in her eyes. She wasn't all there. She would look out into the window and not talk. She would mumble on stories. Her nurse and caretaker said that she had this one story she kept telling over and over and over again and nothing else. So after a few questions, her caretaker told us the story. Katya, who was now 78 years old, had the strangest story anyone had ever heard. And to be honest, people weren't sure whether to believe her or not. Our rep pressed and pressed a little bit for a few more details, and the caretaker finally told us the full story. When she was 28, Katya was beautiful, and I mean drop dead gorgeous. Everyone knew about her in her town. People loved her. Men wanted to marry her. She was the it girl, the dream girl. She lived off the praise, the admiration, and quite frankly, used her beauty to make money. Over the years, she used her beauty to make money with men through partnerships, deals, all sorts of situations. By the time she was in her early 30s, she had racked up so much money she didn't actually need to work and could live a comfortable life. Her one goal was to marry someone as rich, if not more, than she. She eventually met and fell in love with Mark. Now, Mark, you see, was into a little bit of a shady business. Illegal pharmacist. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, forget about it. He was an illegal pharmacist, well known in Mombasa, and all she did was lavish upon him. They had a great life together. He even set up a store for her to be able to wash his money. Over the years, they really felt like they were absolutely unstoppable. Until, of course, one day, as it so happens with people in this field of work, Mark was discovered and apprehended. He passed away in a deadly altercation with the police. Unfortunately for Katya, she was pregnant at that time. Law enforcement quickly seized all their assets, money, froze their accounts, everything was gone. Katya went from riches to rags in a single night. Katya eventually gave birth to 2 baby girls, Zuri and Zawadi. But life was hard, especially for somebody who'd been rich. Eventually, Katya took a trip. She went down to Mombasa, stayed there for 3 months, and came back. But her return was the most shocking thing of all. She left using public transport, completely broke, and returned in a 1970s limousine, rich as creases. Everybody in town wondered what exactly happened, but more on that soon. With her newfound riches, Katya raised Zuri and Zawadi as best as she could. Again, the 2 girls were beautiful, and everybody wanted their attention. Of course, with mommy's money, they had no reason to work. They lived whatever life they saw fit and enjoyed it to the most. By the time the 2 girls reached their mid-20s, they had chosen 2 very distinct lives for themselves. Zuri had decided to give her life to Christ. She was going to follow God and his direction for her. Zawadi, on the other hand, did not believe in Christ, did not see the purpose of religion, and decided that life was meant to be lived to the fullest, right here and right now. Over the years, the girls quickly realized that as much as they were having fun, meeting men, traveling the world, they both had never had serious relationships. They'd had flings, they'd had situationships, but nothing concrete, nothing serious. And though they weren't sure if they did want to get married, they found that to be an odd thing. Zuri ran to God. She went and spoke to her pastor and said that, you know what, something must be going on with me. I really thought that God would provide a husband for me. He would keep me on the straight and narrow path and I'd be complete. So she had a discussion with her pastor and said, Pastor, please help me understand what's going on. So her pastor prayed for her and immediately stopped. He said, Zuri, I am seeing things. What I am seeing, I am not liking. If you want to fix this issue about marriage, you need to pray, and you need to pray hard. There is something going on in the spirit in your life. I cannot tell you. All I can say is that God is working. Something bad will happen, but it will be for the glory of the Lord. And that was all the pastor was willing to tell her. Zuri said, that is not enough information. I need more. You're not telling me, I'm going to somebody else. So she went and got a second opinion. She found another pastor. Again, this pastor prayed for her and he looked up and said, oh, Madame Zuri, again, there's something going on in your life. She goes, yes, I know, I've heard. He goes, I can't give you details. God is working in your life, but there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of bad things happening. There's a lot of bad things that are going to happen. All I can tell you is that you should speak to your mother. That only made Zuri so much more worried. Zawadi, on the other hand, wasn't sure she wanted to get married, but she didn't like how things were going for her. So she decided to resort to a malam instead. She said they were more in touch with the ancestors and the roots of her nation. So she had the conversation with the malam. He started his incantations and said, oh, I am seeing something in your spirit around you. I'm not sure if I should tell you. Zawadi said, I absolutely need the information. Tell me now. The malam said, it so happens that your marital situation, you should speak to your mother. However, I will guide you. I'll give you certain questions to ask her to ensure she tells you the absolute truth. And he did. He gave her certain questions very specific to the situation. By the time Zawadi went home and told Zuri what had happened, Zuri was not amused. She said, God is going to be the answer to this situation. Why are you going to malams? However, Zuri was also tired of praying and waiting and asking pastors to deliver her. So she said, you know what? Fine. Let's go and meet our mother. Let's have this discussion. Let's ask all the appropriate questions and see what's going on. So the two girls go and confront their mother and say, Ma, we need answers. We need explanations and we want them now. At that time, Katya herself had not been feeling well. She was getting old, but she'd also contracted lung cancer and was struggling. She was sick and frail and was taking medications on a daily. And to be honest, was almost using it as an excuse to not have to answer the girls' questions. However, the girl said, look, Ma, we understand you're suffering, but we need answers and we want to know before anything potentially bad happens to you. Again, using the poignant questions the malam had told them, they asked, and eventually an hour later, Katya confessed. She said, look, years ago, when I was young, I lost your guys' father in a very gruesome situation. But I was left alone to raise you guys, no money, no support. One day I packed up and left to Mombasa for 3 months. Everyone thought I went to see a family member. And you know what? That is exactly what I told them. But in truth, a friend took me to see a chief priest. Hold up, wait, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now let's go back to the show. And this chief priest, I told him I needed money and I would do almost anything for it. The chief priest consulted with a deity and told me terms and conditions must be met. I had to sacrifice something. They gave me a list of things to sacrifice and I must choose one. At this moment, Katya didn't want to tell her kids anymore. She was like, I'm done talking about this. I sacrificed something, that was the end of it. Zuri and Zawadi said, absolutely not. The full story immediately now. Thank you. So Katya, their mother, continued. She said, look, before I tell you this, you have to promise me not to be mad at me and to forgive me. I did what I thought was the only solution. She then confessed and said, what I chose to give up was both of you, your marital glory. Zuri and Zawadi said, I don't understand. What does that mean? Katya said, the deity, in payment for all the riches and the money that I wanted, the both of you would not marry, not be happy in a marriage. You will not succeed in marriage. And at that time, I agreed. I thought it made sense. And this is why you've been suffering. Upon hearing this, both sisters were completely crushed. They did not respect their mother anymore. They did not want anything to do with her. They wanted her dead and gone. So they left. Katya sat alone in her home and cried. With this information, Zuri said, I am going to my pastor. I'm going to pray. He needs to tell me how to break these chains. So she went to the pastor and told him, I found it. I figured it out. What do I do next? Again, the pastor said, hold steady, my child. This is the Lord's battle. More things are going to happen. More things are going to come out. You must sit and pray. On the other hand, Zawadi went straight back to her malam and said, sir, I found the answer. What do I do next? This thing must end. The malam said, this situation is a little tricky. It's a very expensive one to fix. However, it will not cost you money. Zawadi said, no money? Then what will it cost me? Explain. I need this altar broken down. The malam says you have to perform a spell. There are potions people have to drink. There are incantations you have to state. There is a state of being you have to accomplish. And it will be very hard. And if you do not do it from beginning to end, things will go wrong. Zawadi said, look, pen, paper, ready, let's go. The malam told her, very well, you will have to put your mother in an induced coma for 3 days. During those 3 days, you will have a certain incantation to state, and you will say it 12 times every single day. You must ensure that she does not wake up during those 3 days. And after that, the spell will be broken. You know, Zawadi was on board, but 3 days was long. Her mother was frail, her mother was sick, and in addition, she was taking medications every single day. Putting her in a coma for 3 days was going to be harder than it looked. But Zawadi was tired of this series of bad luck that was following her. She wanted it gone, done for. So she agreed. One afternoon, she went over to her mother's house and told her mother, I want to hear your side of the story. Maybe explain to me why you did this. Zawadi sat down with her, offered her a cup of coffee and said, Ma, drink this. Let us discuss. In that coffee, Zawadi had put a potion liquid. Soon after her mother drank it, she fell into a deep sleep. Zawadi carried her, put her to bed, and started the process. She laid her mother down. She set candles around her body, leaves, petals, and started the incantation. As your soul leaves your body, I speak to your soul. I tell you, Katya, to walk out of that fetish priest's place without accepting the offer for the exchange. She was to say that 12 times. This incantation was to guide her mother's soul to go back in time to the moment the incident occurred and to make a different decision. Unfortunately for Zawadi, that process needed to last 3 whole days. By day 2, Zawadi was exhausted. She was tired, but her mother was still in the coma. So ideally, everything was still working. Zuri, on the other hand, was tired of waiting for God. She was tired of waiting. She had tried to reach out to Zawadi and was hearing nothing. She didn't want to have anything to do with her mother, Katya, but she knew nothing of what was going on. So by the second day, Zuri started knocking on her mother's door. She wanted to find out what her mother was doing. She wanted to find out where Zawadi was. She wanted to know why she hadn't heard from either of them in several days. Zawadi, upon hearing her sister knocking, goes to the door, opens it, and says, calm down. Zuri walks in and says, no, what are you doing here? Why am I seeing candles? What's happening here? I don't know what's going on. Where is our mother? Zawadi said, look, I'm in the process of doing something. You need to let it happen. Zuri bursts in and enters her mother's room and sees her in this state, completely frail. At that moment, Katya's body starts coughing and coughing, as again, she has not had her meds in over 48 hours. Zuri looks at Zawadi and says, what are you doing? How could you? What's happening? Zawadi says, wait, hold on. There's a process ongoing. I'm trying to cleanse of this evil she has done to us. Zuri says, this is not the way to do it. I spoke to a pastor. He said we should pray. He said God is going to do something. Zuri pushed Zawadi over and started shaking their mother, attempting to wake her up. Zawadi argued with her, and in the commotion, Katya woke up with a start. She looked at her girls and said, oh my gosh, I just had a dream. I was in the past. I was talking to the fetish priest, and she started to narrate her experience. Little did they know that that was going to be the last thing Katya would remember. Her memory completely gone. That dream sequence, the only thing she now knows. Following the incident, Zuri went back to church. She spoke to the pastors, and the pastor said, so it has happened. Zuri said, what? The pastor said, look, I know you've been struggling. I know this was hard, but the Lord wanted it to happen this way. He allowed the enemy to use your sister to punish your mother. Your mother is now trapped in this state, and you guys have the answers. Stick with the good Lord, and he will light up the rest of your path. And true, that is exactly what happened. 2 years later, Zuri met a handsome pilot and got married. Zawadi, on the other hand, after her whole debacle with the priest, was not getting any better. She did not feel like situation had been solved. And upon looking at her sister, she realized that, you know what? Christ really is the only solution. So she's also decided to give her life to Christ. She is currently working on herself, working on her faith towards a better future. But Katya, you ask? Both girls abandoned their mother, sent her to a mental institution where her dream was said on repeat. Everyone in that mental institution said that this dream in which she traveled to the past and saw her younger self and nicknamed her the time-traveling woman. Now that's an Entangled Web Stories. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Entangled Web Stories, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!